Good afternoon, or good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you might be from. If I can have a mic check, that'd be really good. If you can hear me, is it too low? Is it too high? Or does it sound good? Let me know in the chat, and I'll just have a fiddle around a few things while I'm doing that. Sounds good. Thank you very much, Feral Cat. MathPig, does it sound good to you? MathPig is a streaming expert. If you can all let me know what you think. It sounds like too high for you, too low for you. All's clear. Left ear only. Okay, I had that the last time. Don't really know why that is. Maybe it's something to do with my. Okay, well we'll stream on anyway. We'll stream on, and maybe a touch on the high side. Okay, let's have a look. Maybe a touch on the high side, but otherwise fine. Okay, let's bring that down just a touch. How does that sound? Good, good, good. Okay. Well, I'm Matt B. Welcome to M2M. This was originally supposed to be a test stream, but while I was setting up the test stream, I noticed NASA were doing a teleconference, and I'll talk about that in just a second. And if you're new to the channel, you're very welcome. I'm M2M. I haven't done anything for a while, particularly haven't done any streaming for a while or any videos. You know, life get in the way and things like that. And now getting motivated to sort of start doing things again. So anyways, as I was setting up this test stream, NASA decided they were going to do an Artemis1 status teleconference update. So hopefully we're going to hear today what's happening with Artemis1 and when there's likely to be a launch. As it stands at the moment, the latest news was, let's rewind a little bit first of all. On Saturday last, there was a launch attempt, but there was a leak detected in one of the quick disconnect between the mobile launch platform and the SLS rocket, and it was a liquid hydrogen leak. They tried to fix it on the day, but weren't able to do that with various solutions, so they scrubbed the launch. They've been troubleshooting this problem ever since, and the latest is that NASA announced a couple of days ago that they were going to replace the quick disconnect, or fix the quick disconnect, probably replace it altogether, or at least replace the seals to prevent the leak. So that's how we actually stand today. So in terms of when it's likely to launch, now if going by what I hope they've done and they fixed it, we've got a next period of launch windows which begins on the 19th of September, which runs until the 4th of October, with various days and launch windows and things like that. So if they have been able to manage to fix it on the launch pad, that's the sort of period as to when we're likely to see a launch, hopefully. The worst case scenario is they might have to roll back the SLS rocket back to that big building called the Vehicle Assembly Building, or the VAB as it's otherwise known as. Now if that does happen, that means there's some major work that needs doing. So in which case, if that's going to happen, is we're not going to see a launch until the next period after that, which begins on the 17th of October and runs until the 31st of October. So that's how we stand right now with Artemis1. So hopefully we're going to know with this teleconference that they're putting on what the status is and where we're going to be likely to be going next. So it looks like the teleconference is going to be starting shortly. Let me just have a couple of fiddle around with a couple of things, and we'll go to them. Sorry. So who we got on the chat? So we got Commander 401, she was the first in. Judy Bassett, Feral Cat, welcome. MathPig, I've been talking to MathPig. He's a bit of a streaming expert, so I might be picking his brains at some point or another. to solve mob problems. I've already talked to him. Glober Mum, welcome. Triggered Limey, how's it doing, pal? Who we got? Big. Yeah, that's who we got at the moment. Anybody else that's watching? You please comment in the chat. Any questions? Let me know how I'm doing, and it would be good. So all sounds good. Okay, good. Looks like vMix is working reasonably well, except for seems to be working in one channel, one ear. I don't quite know why that is. When my last test stream that I did the other day, when I was using OBS, that was the same problem. So that's enough of me wittering on. Simon Dan. Hey Dan, how's it going? Nice to see you. Welcome to this little test stream. Well, it's now turned into something else now. We're getting an Artemis 1 update. So I am going to hand over to them because it looks like they either started or about to start. Let me just have a little listen myself. Where are we?
For our planning, you'll hear about the tanking.
Yeah, I'm going to hand over to them now because they have actually already started.
Mike Bolger. But our requested dates we put on yesterday were the 23rd of September and the 27th of September. Those dates I mentioned on Saturday that we're trying to work with other NASA programs and obviously other users on the range as well. The 23rd we picked. We're trying to deconflict with the DART impact. The conflict there is use of the Deep Space Network. We want to stay outside of their I'll say lockdown of the DSN, which is why we picked the 23rd, so that some of our critical events, if we were fortunate enough to get the waiver from the range and to actually launch on the 23rd, our critical requirements post initial launch would fall on the other side of the impact of DART on the 26th. So that's how we came up with the 23rd. And then the 27th of September keeps us on the right side of DART, or on the back side of DART, I should say, and then in advance of some other activities on the range that are scheduled for the 30th. There's actually no conflict with anything on the 27th. And then we're looking at a third date, but that is a constraint with Crew 5. I mentioned that briefly. We're just trying to work with the Crew 5 program, and obviously Kennedy, from a consumables perspective, with other activities on the range with replenishment times for the GN2 between launches. So we'll hold to those two dates. We'll continue to work with our great partner in the range as they evaluate the realism and feasibility of our waiver request. And certainly if they decide that is not the right thing to do, we obviously will support that and stand down and look for our next launch attempt. But we still will press with the tanking test. So let me turn it over to Mike Bolger and let him talk about the processing going on at the pad and those next steps.
So it looks like it's going to be the 23rd or the 27th as it stands right now.
I want to give you a quick update on how things are going. So since standing down from last Saturday's launch attempt, we've been busy deconfiguring from launch and then working to repair the hydrogen leak that we found during tanking. The repair is basically to remove and replace seals on the 8-inch fill and drain quick disconnect, and then also the 4-inch bleed QD that are both at that flight to ground interface between the LH2 tail service mast umbilical, or TSMU, and the core stage. So to perform that work, we have to demate the LH2 TSMU plate from the flight plate. So there are two plates there that come together, one on the flight side and one on the ground side, to gain access to the QDs. Once the plates are disconnected, the workers install transportation caps in the various lines and a plate cover to protect against contamination while we do the work. We're making great progress. Yesterday we completed the plate demate and began inspection of the seals. Following that, we set up an enclosure around the area to protect the hardware from weather and any other environmental conditions while we perform the seal R&R. Regarding the enclosure, kind of imagine a plastic tent, if you will, that encloses both the workers and the flight plate on some TSMU access stands that we've got out there. So again, kind of imagine a plastic tent, and we've got some conditioned air going in there as well to keep the environment good for the work that we're doing. This morning, we began the R&R, so we've actually got help from our Boeing teammates out there to do that R&R. And if the weather holds up, our plan is to complete both the 8-inch and the 4-inch seal R&Rs by the end of today. Weather could be dicey later in the day, so if that happens, we might just get the 8-inch done. That's something that we'll be keeping a close eye on. If we're able to get both done today, then tomorrow we'll remate the plates ahead of retest this weekend. The retest will be kind of like a mini IVT where we'll be making sure that the data's flowing and that all of our systems are coming up as expected. Following that, we're looking at a cryo demo for verification of the seal. We set a target date of September 17th. Our timeline to get to that is pretty close, so it could, I would not be surprised to see it slip a day or two, but we're targeting September 17th. And that cryo event will be to verify the seal R&R is good. Our preliminary plan is to have the cryo team tank both the core stage and the upper stage with LH2 and LO2. We're taking a look at our procedures and our software now to think about what exactly that would look like. That could ultimately end up being the long pole to get into the test. One thing that we've talked about with the SLS team, really they brought it forward, is a change in our concept of operations to reduce the pressure and flow changes during tanking. So we're calling it a kinder and gentler approach to tanking. We think that may help reduce the stress of pulses or sudden changes on the seals. So big picture, by replacing the seals and going through this cryo event, making the tanking process as benign as possible, we're optimistic that we can knock this problem flat and have a successful tanking. Let's see, from there, we'll determine whether we stay at the pad for a launch attempt in launch period 26 or whether we roll back. I would tell you the team is making great progress.
We've been able to turn around this one leak issue within a week with a good plan.
Thanks. And so now we'll take questions from those on the line. Those on the phone should press *1 to be entered into the queue. You can press *2 if you would like to be removed from your queue if your question is answered. And again, please state your name and affiliation and to whom you're addressing your question. And of course, we do ask that you limit your questions to one question and so that we can get to as many reporters as possible. And if we have time, we'll go for a second round of questions. So for the first question, we'll go to Marcia Dunn with Associated Press.
For Mr. Free, when do you expect to hear from the range regarding the waiver, and when do you need to hear from them in order to make late September? And it almost sounds like you're in a hurry to get this going. Why not just wait till October? What are the pros and cons about that? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Marcia. As I said, kind of at the end of my remarks, we're pressing for the tanking test. That's in our I guess the forefront for us. We're continuing to look for if the range has questions. Obviously, we'd like to hear from them, but we're following their process. So right now, we submitted the waiver, and we'll look to hear from them on any clarifications that they need from us. When we get closer to to the tanking test, obviously we'll have to make a decision after that if we don't have a decision from the range. And then the third part of your question was why not just wait and go to the pros and cons about just waiting and going to October. We need to get the tanking test done, and then we'll have to look at what is the realism and schedule for us for launch periods 27 and 28 based on what we learned from the tanking test and what the team would need to do to roll back if we haven't gotten that waiver from the range and look at the impacts for 27 and 28.
Thank you. Our next question is from Bill Harwood of CBS News.
Hey, thanks. Bill Harwood here. I'm looking for a little detail on two topics. First, for John Blevins, where are the FTS batteries in question located in the rocket? Are they on one or both stages? And what's involved in testing or recertifying them if you have to? And I'm just wondering what data is available to base an extension on. And a quick follow, if I can. I'm sorry, Catherine. Can you give us an update on where we stand on the SRBs in terms of how long they can be stacked before you guys would have to take some action, and what the issues are there? Thanks.
Hey, Bill. This is John Blevins. I might have all three of your questions out of the one question. First of all, there are FTS batteries that are on each system. So we do have FTS batteries that are on the ICPS. There are FTS batteries on the core stage. There are FTS batteries on the booster. The real heart of the system is the core stage. And so the batteries at question that we're talking about are core stage batteries. They are different than the other systems, and because of their size and mass, they're a little more prone to meeting that retest evaluation due to crystal growth. And so ultimately, the batteries that you're really asking about, Bill, are core stage batteries. And so there are three. There's one for every command receiver decoder where you might receive a termination command from the ground and have that set up. And so those actually are kind of the heart of the overall system. And so those are the batteries at question to answer that question there in the core stage. As far as recertify them, I'm really not sure what you're asking, other than we do tests and then we have battery replacement intervals for those tests. But what we do in conjunction with the range or with our partners there is we do end-to-end testing, right? All the components, top to bottom, to verify things. We do also monitor all of the systems while it's on the pad. So there's some monitoring that occurs passively while we're setting out the pad as well. As far as your question on the SRB stack life, we have for a long time, of course, worked with this material, and so there's numerous data that we can use to bring forward to show the risk, which is minimal, with additional stack life based on slump and other properties of the SRBs. And so we continue to do that to show the risk to the decision makers. That risk is very low, and so that's where we are with the SRB stack life. I think I caught all three of your questions, Bill.
Thanks, John. Our next question is from Kristen Fisher of CNN.
Hi, thank you all for taking my question. My question is about something that Mike Serafin said at the Saturday briefing after the second scrub. He described that inadvertent pressurization of the hydrogen line, and he mentioned at the time that he wasn't sure if that's what caused the hydrogen leak or not. Can you all explain now, do you know if that inadvertent pressurization, did that cause the hydrogen leak on Saturday? And if so, was that human error or computer error? Thank you.
Let's see, this is Mike Bolger. Do you want me to take first crack at that one?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay. So let's see, like Mike Serafin said Saturday, we did pressurize the system above the interface requirement that we have from SLS. However, we don't know if that pressure excursion had any effect on the QD. We're still doing that analysis. We know we didn't exceed the hardware design specifications, but we did overpress the system versus that ICD that we've got. So our engineering teams continue to evaluate what happened there. And I talked a little bit earlier about the updated ConOps, about us trying to have a kinder and gentler, if you will, loading process. One of the things that we're really talking about is avoiding pressure excursions. The only other thing I would say is that, after that, our management team apologized to that operator because we had made some manual procedure changes between the attempt on Monday and the attempt on Saturday. So where we normally relied on an automated sequence, we had folks doing some manual procedures, and we practiced it during the week, but they'd only had a couple chances. So we didn't, as a leadership team, put our operators in the best place we could have. We rely really heavily on our cryo team. They really are amazing at what they do. They deliver for us over and over, and I know that they're going to, again, for the next launch attempt.
And I would just add, that's what really we're factoring into getting ready for the tanking test. Charlie Blackwell-Thompson, I keep asking her in meetings like, hey, let's make sure we have enough time for your folks to be ready and practice the loading procedure. So it's front and center for us. And I said to the team, this is we all own the process, and Mike just hit on it well. This is all of us, especially us as leaders, and how far and how fast we're pushing the team. So it was as far as I was concerned, everybody's finger was on that switch.
Thank you. Our next question is from Irene Klotz of Aviation Week.
Thanks, Catherine. Could you just clarify on the FTS if that is a replace or just a retest? And maybe another way of asking the question Bill was asking before is, what do your ground tests show that battery system is good for? Obviously, you already got from the 20 to the 25 days, but how far, just from the ground testing, does NASA think that can be accommodated? And also, what exact date did you put the waiver in? Thanks.
Jim, I guess you want me to take the first cut at some of that.
That'd be great.
So there are retest and replace requirements for any of these systems, right? They have a full useful life. The first one we've been talking about is the retest requirement, like when we go back and we evaluate the end-to-end system. There are useful lives of these batteries as well, so there is a replacement life to the batteries. In addition to the retest requirements, we don't bump up against that particular replace requirement within the waiver request. As far as the data, the range is responsible for public safety. And, certainly if we have our sample size of testing, we've got to show confidence beyond that. And that's their call on exactly what that confidence is. I don't want to get into the details of the testing, but we have used similar batteries for much longer than the request. And I say used, I mean tested for longer than the requested time under arduous conditions. But, ultimately they have to look at that from a statistical standpoint and make sure they believe the enclosure, the safety is supported with that. But, I'll just say, the test data shows considerable time beyond the requested waiver for the retest requirements. Once we get to the end of the life of that battery, we replace that battery, and that time isn't just yet. As far as submitting the waiver, we have talked to the range, and part of that is just understanding what they want us to include. There's a lot of things they need to consider, and so there's an initial talk, and we were able to achieve that shortly after the attempt that was scrubbed last Saturday. So I believe Tuesday morning I was in that call with him and several other engineers, and then we submitted the next day all the data that they need to take a look at, and then I think the formal format of that may have come out just this morning. So the last 3 days has been constant contact of working to make sure that we work with them, and we've done that before, and this isn't the first time that we work with the range. NASA has a long history of collaborative work with that group in order to achieve flight. So that gives you the timeline. I think that was the last bit of the question, Irene.
Thank you. Our next question is from Micah Maidenberg from the Wall Street Journal.
Hey, everybody. Good morning. Mike, you talked about the continuing work on the pressurization a couple of minutes ago. I'm just curious, have any other sort of theories or lines of inquiry emerged about what may have caused the leak on Saturday, beyond sort of that pressurization, which has, been described as a possible cause, if I'm not mistaken? Thanks.
Yeah, sure. So the teams are still in the field doing the inspections. We'll get the seal out today, and we think we'll learn some more from that. The idea of the kinder, gentler approach is really based on experience, both in the way that Stennis does the green run tanking, and then also as we've reacted to leaks that we've had here at KSC, not just the event Saturday, but other leaks. We've noticed that when we temper the changes, we're better able to manage those leaks when we move more slowly. So we think it's a promising approach to dealing with the issues. Not necessarily going to say that this is endgame, but we think it's promising. And so, again, we're gonna work hard to really try to slow that down. One of the things that we're doing to help with that is we've got some prompts in our automated software where now, as we're kind of transitioning through the various phases of tanking, we can stop when we're going from chill down to slow fill or slow fill to fast fill, and just make sure that we think we've appropriately conditioned the interface and that we've appropriately conditioned the tank. So I wouldn't call it necessarily we're 100% certain this is going to solve the issues, but we do, based on the experience that we've had to date, feel confident that this ought to help us. And let me ask John Blevins if he had anything he wanted to add to that.
Mike, I think you covered the bases really well. I will say that we're NASA, so we do a fault tree and we look at every possible thing, and then we try to use some engineering judgment to focus on the fault tree links that are the most. And Mike just covered those, right? Whether it's that incident that everybody is focused on, or more generally if you will, the pressure and temperature changes and the rate of change, we're gonna work on all of that. And personally, I think it's more the latter. I think this is just a symptom of putting two new systems together and looking at the flow rate, the thermal mass of the systems, and the pressure changes. And now we have that witness. We have the data. We have the leak, and every time we put it together, we learn a little bit. And I think that kinder, gentler, I think that's a great way to refer to it. I think that is consistent with our history, and I think that's going to be a big win for us, regardless of the reason that we had the leak last week.
Thank you. Our next question is from Gina Sunseri of ABC News.
Good morning. You talked about the 23rd and the 27th being possible launch dates. What do those mission profiles look like on those days?
This is Jim Free. So the 23rd is a 6:47 a.m. window open for an 80-minute total window, and the 27th is an 11:37 a.m. Open to the window with a 70-minute duration.
And how long would those missions last?
Yeah, just 1 second. And so the 23rd, that would be landing on the 18th of October, and the 27th will land on the 5th of November.
Thank you. Our next question is from Eric Berger of Ars Technica.
Hi, thanks very much for doing this. Just a little bit more about the tanking test. Is that just the fill to like 8 to 10% that you talked about previously? Is it going to be a full tanking now that you're doing, including the ICPS, it appears? Or is this potentially even a full wet dress rehearsal? Just trying to get a better sense of what your plans are for the targeted 17th test. Thanks.
Yeah, hey, this is Mike Fulch. I'll take first crack at that one. So first of all, the team's still kind of putting the final details together, but the tentative plan that we're looking at is to do a full tanking of both core stage and upper stage. So, through slow fill, through fast fill, through replenish, and And so basically that would be not to the wet dress standpoint where we're trying to count down through a terminal count. We're really just trying to prove that we've got a good seal. And so we think this is a good opportunity for us to do it. And given as much setup time as it takes to get into a cryo event like this, it made sense for us to go ahead and practice, again, both core stage and upper stage. It's also simpler for us from the standpoint of less changes to our procedures and less changes to our software. And so, there's a lot of good about it. But like I said, it's not a final verdict, but that looks like where it's headed. That's our tentative plan.
Thank you. Our next question is from Ken Chang of New York Times.
Hi, thank you. Just wondering, are there limits to how many times the rocket can be rolled to and from the VAB? And going forward, so what components will be showing as lifetime limited first? Thank you.
Yeah, this is John Blevins, Ken. I'll take a cut at that to try to explain it well. Certainly, everything on the rocket has some life on it, but when you roll back and forth, and we tend to protect against rolls back and forth, those are complex, and that they're kind of fatigue and fracture calculations. It is a very thorough and conservative process. Let me tell you how we got to where we are. What we did is we took originally historic data, right? The first rollout of this vehicle really wasn't so long ago, but you were building it, you were designing it earlier. And so, what you do is you take the information you think you got and you add a little factor to it and you go analyze that. And so what we did, since we have the same cargo transporter, but we have similar to some other heritage events, we took not just shuttle rolls, but we took empty rolls of the cargo transporter or partial stacks. And when you add mass to that cargo transport, you actually attenuate some of that vibration. And so we combined all of that, though, as a spectra, and we give that to the different elements and programs. And then we go in and we try to design the hardware to be certified to a certain number of rolls. Certainly this particular first flight hardware we've asked a little bit more of than we plan on asking out of future flight hardware. But as far as the initial certification was to a certain level that we have not exceeded. We also measured our vehicle rollout when we rolled out the first time, I believe it was March 17th, and we had that fully instrumented. And in fact, I had the privilege of walking with the rocket while our loads team was monitoring that info, and we were passing data back and forth to Charlie during that roll, and we hit different speeds. And so that rollout itself was a great test to the system. And so we have that data. The different elements and different parts of the rocket are certified to different levels of rolls. We have not exceeded those, nor will we exceed those if we have to roll back and come back. In addition to that comment, I would like to say, just as far as the process goes, there's not a real known cliff here, right? What you do is you calculate how many rolls that you think you can sustain, if you will, from the critical parts. And then you basically divide that number by 4 so that you can have 4 lives, so that you can have margin to that. And so that's why when we talk about rolls, we want to protect against them, because they are an event. They're a broad event. They affect virtually everything on the rocket. There's other factors that play in, Ken, like for instance, we've got to assume a wind when we roll, right? And so what we assume is that we might be rolling back from even, say, a tropical event. And so we estimate the winds to be in the 47 type knot range at the 60-foot level. And so there's a lot of embedded analysis to cover events, and most of those events have not occurred, and we'd have to go back and do a lot of detailed calculations to give a specific number. If we wanted to, say, clear it for a lot of additional rolls, that would be a lot of work to do that, and it would be constrained by what we assume those events to be, whether those rollbacks are during tropical events or whether they're more benign winds, which is what we've experienced currently today. And certainly those experiences today help add extra life to the vehicle as well. But to answer your question, you asked what would have to be changed. Every element has something different, and it's really about the frequencies at which you roll. And so those do change with the events. And so it'd really be speculative to give you some bolt or some one single component that had to be changed, because if we did go back and we assess that beyond our certified limit, we'd be looking at the spectra that we have realized and at that time doing the detailed calculations of what we felt was was necessary to go in and inspect and either inspect or replace. Let me just add that I do feel confident the vehicle is in good shape, right? And if we need to use rolls, as Mr. Free said, going back, we're going to use rolls. It's something that as the chief engineer I protect against. Everybody in this call has probably heard me say that, just because it is an event for the vehicle that does add just routine wear and tear, and I don't want to do that. And hopefully, Ken, that answered enough of your question.
Thank you. Our next question is from Jeff Faust of Space News.
Good morning. To follow up on Eric Berger's question, if you're going to do a full tanking of the vehicle, both the core stage and the upper stage, is there any reason why you wouldn't do a full wet dress rehearsal, do the countdown down to T-minus 10 seconds or so, just to buy down risk and make sure you understand everything about the vehicle before you do an actual launch attempt on the 23rd or later? Thanks.
Jeff, I guess I'll start, and John may want to add some to it as well. But I mean, really, the purpose of this event is to prove to ourselves that that the seals that we've replaced are good. We have run wet dress attempts, as you know, in the past, and accomplished the goals that we set out to accomplish. The one piece that we're still taking a look at is we may do a pre-press test where we're getting up to flight pressure on the core stage LH2 tank, which we haven't accomplished. That we may add to this cryo event. That's one of the loose ends that we're still talking about. If not, we'll build that into the beginning of our next launch attempt. But other than that, we feel like the prior wet dresses that we've run have accomplished all of the requirements that we intended to capture as a part of those wet dresses, and so we didn't feel like it was needed. John, was there anything you wanted to add to that one?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Jeff, each one of these events that we do, is just risk buy down and to some degree maybe risk versus risk. And I think Mike characterized it extremely well that, if we didn't have confidence in some of those things that go in there, we probably would do a full wet dress. I think, you might say that it's been piece parted, if you will, a little bit because of the one thing that we didn't get to and some of the transitions. They're getting down to T-minus 33. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the full tanking does allow us to take one of those things that we've talked about before and was the reason for the first launch scrub, was the understanding of not just the engine chill process, but how we dial those valves in to hit the terminal count just right. And we need the full tanks to do that. And so it's really a risk versus risk. We don't want to get fully tanked and just stay on condition for a long time unnecessarily, because that could that would continue to affect the TPS potentially, not to a point where I don't think we're viable, but you just don't want to do things you don't have to do. So it's really about the questions we're trying to answer, as Mike said, and the questions we're trying to answer, some of them could be answered with just a short fast fill type tanking, but if we want to answer the majority of them, this test that Charlie and the team have devised, I think is a really smart test to do risk mitigation going into the next launch attempt.
Thank you. Our next question is from Joey Roulette of Reuters.
Hey, thanks. I guess this is for anybody who can answer. Besides the hydrogen leak that you guys are looking at, have you found any other issues on the rocket or on the ground system that might require some closer inspection? And then also for Jim, I think, how late can Crew 5 get delayed from October 3rd before the late October launch period for SLS is taken off the table? Thanks.
I guess Mike or John, if you want to take in the first part of that.
Okay, I'll answer from a ground system standpoint. From a ground system standpoint, we are looking clean. We're not working any issues that at this point look like they would be a constraint for us to get into that cryo event. So we're in pretty good shape.
And from the vehicle, it's a similar story. We are always looking at the rocket. Joey, we're looking at the rocket in countdown. We're looking at the rocket no matter what we do. We'll be looking at the rocket in the cryo demo that we're talking about. But we have no current constraints to a launch attempt from everything we've observed, and we'll continue to look at the rocket.
And then just to follow up on the last part, it's what I said earlier. We're working with the range.
Oh, well, there you go then. I thought I'd just end it there because they kind of go into more and more pretty much the same sort of stuff, really, to be honest. So, hold on, let me just get rid of this. There we go, that's better. Well, we've got a repeat of that. So, to summarise then, they are looking to... can you hear me in the chat, by the way? Can you hear me okay? I think it's okay. I think the audio is okay. Do I sound all right? Yeah, good. Okay, cool. So yeah, to summarise then, so they're looking to target either the 23rd or the 27th of September to launch Artemis 1. But it's all dependent on a tanking test on the 17th. Now, a tanking test, basically what it means is, or tanking in general, or tanking test, is that they're going to fully fuel up the rocket, basically, with both liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen. And they're also going to pressurize the tanks all the way to launch pressure. So that would be the pressure of the tanks at the moment of launch. So they're really going to sort of test out the whole tanking process, the whole fueling up process, to see whether they can detect any leaks again. So that's happened. So it's all really dependent on that crucial test, really, on the 17th of September. If it all goes well, hopefully we'll see it happen on the 23rd. If there's a few hiccups or anything major, then they might review that back to the 27th or even the 28th, was also mentioned as well. So that could also happen as well. If that all fails again, what we're going to see is the SLS rocket is going to be rolled back into that big building we all know now as the VAB, or the Vehicle Assemble Building. That's that really tall building. Once it goes in there, it's going to be in there for a while. So then that's likely to be pushed back the next period of launch windows, which starts on the 17th of October and runs through to the 31st of October. But problem is with that, as we get in later on in the year, is we could be seeing weather issues as well, which could cause delays with launches and things like that. So yeah, well, I hope they do. But here's the thing, this is what we've all got to remember, is Artemis 1 is a test launch. Okay, this is all brand new hardware, it's brand new avionics, brand new electronics, brand new processes, and all the rest of it as well. So with test launches, this happens all the time. Launches are very, very fluid, and I saw that when I was following the Falcon 9, SpaceX Falcon 9 test launches. Also the early development of SpaceX's Starship as well. It's all very fluid, lots of scrubs and all the rest of it. So we might well see some more scrubs before these launches, but this is the world of test launches. What you're going to find is that NASA are developing SLS as a workhorse for not just for Artemis returning to the moon, but they're going to use it for all kinds of different things. Possibly even it's going to be a heavy lift vehicle, so large amounts of satellites or cargo to the possibly to the ISS. I'm not 100% sure about that. Once they get things moving on the moon, they're going to be lots of cargo going backwards and forwards to the gateway, all kinds of different things. So eventually what will happen is, just like SpaceX are doing at the moment with the Falcon 9, you see how many launches they're doing. They're doing 2, sometimes 3 a month without fail, and they're not getting in very many scrubs at all, apart from maybe the odd weather thing. So that's eventually what they're aiming to do, and what they're actually hoping to do with SLS. Now with Space Shuttle, that was quite fairly regular launches, but the problem with Space Shuttle was that it was quite a complex machine. SLS still complex, but maybe not as complex, and it's not reusable, sadly. So who knows? Maybe NASA will look at reusable systems in the near future. So that's where we all stand now. So again, 23rd and 27th, we're looking to launch, all depending on that crucial tanking test, fueling test on the 17th. So that's where we are at the moment. So I'm going to end the stream there now. Thank you very, very much for joining me. This is kind of a good little test stream here today. So I appreciate you coming. And I thought we might as well use that opportunity to kind of test this vMix that I got out, and I hope it seems to be working quite well. I understand from somebody that it was only seems to be working in one area, one or the other. I'm not quite sure why. I'll have a look at the replay once it's posted up on the channel later on, and we'll try and figure out what that is all about. But generally speaking, it seems to work okay. I kind of quite like vMix as opposed to OBS. I paid for a month subscription for it, so all being well, if I can afford it in a month or two, I'll buy the HD version, and we'll see how we go with that. So I'm going to play you out with the video that we when we first went live, and thank you very much for joining me. Have a great day.